But what I want to talk about today, I'm going to give you a few, and I mean that literally, three different but related examples of certain people, certain elected officials, certain advocacy groups reversing course on policies, laws, things that they've imposed on American citizens. And now, for a number of reasons, they see are not working. They should have seen from day one, of course. Any 10-year-old with most of these things could have understood why they were horrible ideas. I know I did. I know I was outspoken about it 10, 20, 25 years ago, some of these things. And now, again, for a number of reasons, these people are reversing course. So I'm going to get right into it. I want to start right now. I want to start with Oregon, the wonderful blue state of Oregon. And I don't mean just the Pacific Ocean on its west coast. I'm talking about the people who run that really geographically beautiful state. I've been there many times. I won't go anytime soon because of what's happening, especially in their biggest city of Oregon, Portland. Here we go. With Oregon facing rampant public drug use, lawmakers backpedal on pioneering decriminalization law. This is from the Associated Press. Just so you know, I try to get a varied source of information, news articles, not all from one place. So this is from the AP. And this is just a couple of weeks ago, the story broke. Salem, Oregon, AP, Democrat lawmakers in Oregon on Tuesday unveiled a sweeping new bill that would undo a key part of the state's first in the nation drug decriminalization. They call it decriminalization law. It's really a drug legalization law. Is what they did. And I'll show it to you in a minute, but they just simply legalized these illicit drugs, not decriminalization. Just call it what it is, legalization. A recognition that public opinion has soured on the measure amid rampant public drug use during the fentanyl crisis. The bill would recriminalize the possession of small amounts of drugs as a low-level misdemeanor. Mistake. Here they are already. They're realizing what a disaster their policies are, what an utter disaster. And now they just want to hedge their bets. Well, we'll just make them misdemeanors. Wrong. We'll talk about that. So get them to a low-level misdemeanor, enabling police to confiscate them and crack down on their use on sidewalks and in parks, its author said. It also aims to make it easier to prosecute dealers, to access addiction treatment, medication, and to obtain and keep housing without facing discrimination for using that medication. There's so much to unpack there. But again, they're not going far enough, of course. Quote, it's the compromise path, but also the best policy that we can come up with to make sure that we are continuing to keep communities safe and save lives. State Senator Kate Lieber, a Portland Democrat, no kidding, told the Associated Press. So again, her own quote, she wants to compromise. It's a compromise pass. We're going to go ahead and recriminalize some of these things to some extent and things like this, but they won't go the full 9 yards because it's not in their DNA. Voters passed a pioneering decriminalization law, Measure 110, with 58% support in 2020. But Democratic legislatures who champion as a way to treat addiction as a public health matter, not a crime, are now contending with one of the nation's largest spikes in overdose deaths, along with intensifying pressure from Republicans. Thank God there's one Republican or two in Oregon, and growing calls for a well-funded campaign group to overhaul it. Nation leading overdose deaths. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, in 2020, this law was passed, and what's happened since? They've had untold numbers. Maybe there's a record here, but certainly a massive wave of people dying because of the policies they have imposed on the people of Oregon. Dead people are a result of what they legislated. They said it themselves. Researchers say it's too soon to determine. This is, by the way, this is a doozy. Researchers say it's too soon to determine whether the law has contributed to the state's deadly overdose surge And supporters of the measure say the decades-long approach of arresting people for possessing and using drugs didn't work. You know what? The absurdity speaks for itself right there. They have to ask researchers, hey, do you think us decriminalizing, legalizing heroin, methamphetamine, crystal meth, powder cocaine? Did I say crack cocaine already? Did I say heroin? Of course I did. They have to ask, they have to have researchers figure out if legalizing these illicit, deadly drugs actually had anything to do with a surge of deaths in their state. This is like a parody. You couldn't write a better comedy skit if it weren't so sad. Let me tell you something else right now about this fighting drugs with the laws. Do you remember the phrase, or remember hearing people say, the war on drugs is not working. The war on drugs is not working. We have to come up with other options. We have to come up with other ways to address this health crisis. By the way, part of it is a health crisis, no doubt about it. But throwing away the ability for people, for law enforcement to put handcuffs on these people, put them in prison, and force them into rehabilitation, to throw that away and pretend that the problem's going to get better. Let me ask, just because we can't completely wipe out the drug crisis, we end the war on drugs. Let me ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Have we won the war on cancer? Have we won the war on diabetes? Have we won the war on heart disease? Have we won the war on childhood leukemia? No, we haven't won the war on any of those horrible diseases that kill millions of Americans every year. But do we give up on that war? Do we stop fighting because we haven't snuffed out all those diseases? Of course not. Fighting the war, keeping that war in progress, not backing down, actually saves lives. Whether we win every single individual case, whether we save every life, is not the question. The question is, what does a moral society do? Do we give up the fight? They gave up the fight in Oregon, and it cost lives. That's what happens when you put politics and your stupid philosophies before logic and the rule of law. The bill unveiled by Lieber and other Democrats serving on a recently created Committee on Addiction. Do you really need a Committee on Addiction, ladies and gentlemen? Is set to be introduced during legislative session that starts in February this month. The legislature adjourned over the summer, but concerned over the state's drug crisis led Democrats to launch the committee in between sessions. Oh my God, these people are just selfless. They actually came back in between sessions to address the people who lost lives they're responsible for. These people are superstars. You know what? I think that they should be ordained saints. Absolutely. It's amazing. What a disgrace. Say they're concerned, so they came back to actually do their freaking job. Since September, the committee has held multiple hearings and heard testimony from law enforcement and substance use disorder experts on the law's accomplishments and shortcomings. I wonder where they were when law enforcement 4 years ago was begging them not to legalize heroin, not to legalize fentanyl, not to legalize cocaine. I wonder if they listened to law enforcement leaders then. I think the answer is no. We see what law they passed. Measure 110 directed the state's cannabis tax revenue toward drug addiction treatment while decriminalizing personal use amounts of illicit drugs. Possession of under a gram of heroin, for example, is only subject to a ticket and a maximum fine of $100. Does anybody really think that a heroin addict gives a damn about a traffic citation and a $100 fine, or cares if he or she ever pay a $100 fine or a $10,000 fine for that matter? The answer is no. This is the law they passed 4 years ago, went into effect 3 years ago. Give you a ticket for possession of heroin and other illicit drugs. Those caught with small amounts can have a citation dismissed by calling 24-hour hotline to complete an addiction screening within 45 days. But those who don't do a screening are not penalized for failing to pay the fine. This is in the law, ladies and gentlemen. You can have the ticket dismissed if you call and talk about your addiction within 45 days. And if you don't call, there's no penalty. Why even put that in there? This is the craziness. This is the insanity of people who are running our local and county and state governments, not to mention our federal government, which we'll get to before the end of the show. In the year after the law took effect in February 2021, only 1% received citations for possession sought via the hotline. State auditors found. As of last June, the hotline received an average of 10 calls per month that were related to citations. How many people are on these illicit drugs in Oregon? I don't know, but it's a lot. And they receive 10 calls a month through this hotline. Boy, I wonder how overstaffed that hotline is, huh? Opponents of the law say it hasn't created an incentive to seek treatment. Oh my God, a criticism the new bill seeks to address. The measure's details have yet to be finalized, but quote unquote personal use. And by the way, I was going to address this. What is personal use? And that can vary from state to state about whatever. In other words, you can make up whatever level you want to define personal use. But personal use possession of illegal drugs would become a misdemeanor punishable by 30 days in jail or a $1,200 fine, a misdemeanor. I don't know about Oregon. Remember, in California, you don't even go to jail for misdemeanors anymore, with rare exception. Those arrested for small amounts would be referred by police to a peer support specialist to schedule an assessment or intervention. If the person shows up to the meeting, they wouldn't be charged. If they don't, the offense could be referred to the DA's office. Do you think it's going to happen? If charges are filed, they could avoid jail by agreeing to certain conditions of probation or by agreeing to have their case diverted to drug court, where judges place people in treatment programs rather than in jail. We're trying to give people off ramps, no kidding, while also introducing some accountability into this. There's no accountability here, ladies and gentlemen. They're putting some weak crap on the books with no teeth in it, and they're not going to save anybody. Winding up here, Republican lawmakers said the bill didn't go far enough. No kidding, Republicans, you're right about that. They called for mandatory treatment and personal use possession to be a higher level misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail and a $6,200 fine. A low-class C misdemeanor only provides 30 days in jail as an alternative, so forth and so on. Regarding drug dealing, the bill would make it easier to prosecute people for selling drugs and create harsher penalties for doing so in parks and near homeless shelters and substance use disorder treatment centers. There's a lot more to that article. I cut a lot of it out. The point is this: they're not going far enough in Oregon trying to backtrack on the bill they passed, the law they passed almost 4 years ago. But they know, like I said earlier, they know, like any 10-year-old would know, that if you don't hold people accountable, if there's no sanction, if there's no punishment for behavior, you are going to, by default, encourage that behavior. And now they're trying to look like they're doing something. They're doing nothing, maybe very little, but really, in essence, they're doing nothing. This example, number one, of people now trying to catch up with public sentiment, trying to pretend that they are leaders, trying to pretend that they actually do want to fight a problem. They don't, ladies and gentlemen. They do not want to fight the problem. They don't want to hold people accountable.